Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Abhishek Jain, and I'm pleased to invite you all to the first episode of the KYO series or the Know Your Options post 12th grade series by Planty. In this session, we would be covering a Bachelor of Arts in History. Today, we're very fortunate to have with us Aishwarya Mukhopadhyay, a graduate of the 2019 batch of St.Stephen's College of Delhi University with a BA Honours degree. She is currently pursuing her MPhil in social anthropology from the University of Oxford. In this session, Aishwarya will be speaking in detail on pursuing a BA in history, what it entails, and the various opportunities and career options that it opens up upon completion. I would now like to hand it over to Aishwarya to begin the session.
Hi Abhishek, thanks for the introduction. So hello everyone. I'm going to be talking a little bit about BA History Honors and also about BA History Honors at Stephen, specifically where I did my undergraduate degree. So this session will be divided in two halves. So the first half I'll be talking about St. Stephen's and getting in, etc., and what are the myths, etc., around that. And the second half would be about history generally. First, let me start that since the session is on history after all, that who should apply for a BA History Honors? And honestly, anybody who is passionate about history, you should not pursue anything which you are not passionate about. And careers are something that get figured out and they change, right? And that is perfectly fine. So essentially, a person who is really interested in history, historical events, historical figures, characters, is an ideal candidate for studying history. And what were my personal motivations to opt for a BA History Honors? Well, again, my career plans have changed over time. When I applied for my undergraduate, at that point, I came from Calcutta and I was moving to Delhi. And I really wanted to sit for the civil service exams. So again, history is one of those subjects which are very, very good for civil services. So because it kind of gives you a broad base for everything. And it's all one of those subjects where you just learn so much in a very short period of time. You dabble with all other subjects. So it is a very, very useful subject. So what are essentially the requirements for the course and what are the requirements for Stephen's? So I will present to you a short PowerPoint on that, and maybe we can talk about Stephen's, Delhi University, and pursuing history there. How is it different, etc. Right. So essentially, studying the BA History Honors at St. Stephen's College, I was in the batch of 2016. So I graduated in 2019, which was around 1.5 years back. And a little bit about college, because I think I get a lot of questions about Stephen's and doing history at Stephen's. It was established in 1881. It was initially an institution to disseminate religious education. However, it now teaches a lot of secular subjects like history, economics, English, philosophy, BA program, and the sciences. The institution also reserves like 50% seats for Christian candidates, and it's affiliated to Delhi University, but it retains some sort of semi-autonomous state, which is why the way history is taught is also a little different. And the institution takes in both bachelor's and master's students. So if you are a bachelor's student, well and good. If you want to apply, you can also apply as a master's student where you'd be studying at Delhi University, but your college affiliation will be with St. Stephen's. A little bit about the requirements in general. So this is a broad timeline about what requirements you have for Delhi University and Stephens as well. So essentially, I'm hoping around mid-May you get your ISC CBSE board results, and around 1st June the Delhi University portal opens. So there you have all your colleges, you have your LSR, you have your SRCC, Ramjas, Hindu, everything. So you register on the DU portal, and if you're applying to Stephens, then you register on the St. Stephen's portal. And if it's the St. Stephen's one you're interested in, you submit a brief statement of purpose and other requirement documents. So Stephens has this thing where they want a statement of purpose, basically talking about your humility, your vision in life. Then cutoffs are released. Now Stephens has the first cutoffs which are released, and they are released around 10 days after admission, after your registration closes. And cutoffs are divided according to your stream, arts, science, and commerce, and according to the quotas, right? Then essentially, if you qualify through the cutoffs and your SOP, you get an interview call. And on the interview day, you have a written test for Stephens, the interview itself. And if you are a Christian candidate, you have other questions, which I'm not too sure about. But yes, now if you're applying just to Delhi University and not to Stephens, you can register on the DU portal, and directly your cutoffs are released, and whatever colleges you are eligible for, you can directly apply. And when you apply, there are different cutoff lists. Stephens has only one cutoff list. Other colleges have different cutoff lists. So for example, history, the cutoff may start off at like 97, but eventually by the third or fourth cutoff list, it may drop to like maybe a 92 or a 93, 91 or a 90 even in some colleges. Some common myths about pursuing your undergraduate in history at Stephens. So I have a cutoff list from Stephens here, and here you have you have your cutoffs. So for example, BA program is a very interesting program that Delhi University offers, where you can do your undergraduate in history, economics, philosophy, and political science. Like you have an option where you can pick and choose and do any two subjects. So that's also a way you can pursue history here. So BA program, for example, has a cutoff, and most students for BA program come from a humanities background. So that is why it has the lowest cutoff for general candidates, 96.5. And for commerce and science, it kind of increases because obviously there are less students. So the common myth that I would say about Delhi University in general, for any university, is we keep on talking about the high cutoffs. And honestly, the high cutoffs are there because there are as much students to pull in from and to fill out the class. So essentially, if you have like a 97 or a 96 as a cutoff, like a 96.5, essentially, if the class capacity is 60 students, there will be 60 students to fill out that, or more than 60 actually. In case of Stephens, for example, that is why there's this entire process. Because, for example, people who have got a 97 up or a 96 up are so many that they have to pull it down, right? So that is one common myth. The other common myth is obviously that history is a useless subject. And honestly, like, I'm so sick of hearing it. Because if you just look at the alumni base of people who've done history and have done great things in the world, it is alarming and startling. And I think it's a subject which deserves a lot more credit than it usually gets, because it has given so much to the world and it continues to give so. So, what is my perspective of history at Stephens is a question you guys asked me. So let me, and also what are the skills, etc., that I have kind of learned. So let me kind of break it down to you. So a BA History Honours in Delhi University equips you with a certain knowledge set and a certain skill set as well. So it's both theoretical and practical. So in your first year, you get to focus largely on early India and early social formations of the world. So it's basically your ancient history, your early, your early civilizations, etc. And then you're kind of moving into like the feudal period, the medieval period, and you have a choice to opt for a generic elective. Now this is interesting. So essentially, I did my bachelor's in history, right? But for 4 semesters, so in first year and second year, and each year has 2 semesters, I took, a generic elective in political science. So essentially, for 4 semesters, I was also learning political science, which was directly relevant to my course and to my interests. Other courses which are in offer are all the courses which are taught at the college usually. So you have, philosophy, English, whatever, linguistics, whatever you fancy, and whatever's on choice. The second year, you're focusing on the medieval and the transition from the medieval to the modern world, both in India and the Europe. So in second year, in general, you choose the skill enhancement course. We weren't given a choice though, but we did get 2 skill enhancement course. One was on museums and archives, and that was a very interesting course. We were talking about representation, decolonization of museums, etc., because you see a lot of people are going down the museology, museum anthropology, ethnography, that kind of route. And the other one that I had taken up, I think, was an art history. So again, a lot of students are working on art and art history, and because it's also very intimately linked to the course in general. So that's also another 2 career options right there. And again, you choose another generic elective. In third year, you focus on India and the world. Modern India, the world, and you focus also. You get these choices of focusing on either the USSR or the USA, China, Japan, or Southeast Asia, history of post-independent India. Now, these choices are specific to Stephens. If you are pursuing your undergraduate at any other DU college, you may get another set of preferences, but usually there is always that option of USSR, USA. Now, what are the key features? Like, what skills, knowledge base are you going to get from this history honors, right? So you get your generic elective, which is your GE right here. And you get the ability to kind of gain a deep knowledge base on other subjects. So after studying political science for 4 semesters, so 2 years essentially, I kind of had a deep knowledge base on different subjects. So how do these generic electives work? Essentially, it's topical, right? So I think the first semester we had something on feminist movements and women's movements. Second semester was something on Ambedkar and his politics. Third was in nationalism, and fourth was in globalization. So essentially, like, I got a kind of a broad base to understanding what kind of what kind of scholars, political scientists are thinking about, and I could kind of even apply it to my other to my history papers itself, and also it kind of gives you a deeper knowledge of an interdisciplinary knowledge which you can kind of use elsewhere as well. So that was very, very useful, I think. And that was a good thing that came out of the degree. The SEC, or the skill enhancement courses, were also very, very helpful. It was my first introduction to the idea of museums and representation, and it was also one of my first brushes with anthropology as a subject, which I'm currently pursuing. So while we were not very specifically looking at representation, etc., we did have a lot of practical field work attached to it. So we were visiting archives, we were visiting museums, and looking at it more critically than we usually would. while visiting it. So that was definitely something very, very interesting. I think there are other options which are present in the syllabus. I don't know how much the syllabus has changed now, but there was one, I think, on idea of handicrafts and craft, etc. So again, as you can see, like, these are like history, anthropology, archaeology. These are all sister subjects, and you keep on getting overlaps in terms of career options, and also in terms of skill sets you acquire. Also, there's a lot of focus on international history. So that is something which is very interesting, actually, because when you're focusing so much on international history, you can essentially two things happen. A, you get the ability to read history, not in the sense that when you just read a book, but kind of read into the events, right? Like what happened, etc. So what essentially happens is that once you read history, which is so unfamiliar to you, you get more accustomed to learning about different parts much better. And the focus on international history has also led a lot of people to pursue a degree specifically in international history. And then, of course, you can branch off to international relations from that, which is also very, very interesting. The focus is also paid on heavily on economic and social history. ESC is basically like economic, social, and cultural. ESC is basically like different parts of history. For example, in Oxford, there is specific importance which is given to economic and social history by the history department, and intellectual history. So economic and social history, actually, you'll be dealing with a lot of economic data and a lot of social data as well, and of course cultural data as well. But largely, there's a lot of economics which kind of comes in, especially when you're talking about these transitions from early to medieval, medieval to modern, which becomes interesting for those who are interested in it. And also, the fifth thing that I think I got a lot out of the course was fundamentally that there's a lot of new focus on regional history. So, when we were in school, we used to just learn about, North India largely, and just what happened in North India. And we don't really learn about different places. But in reality, we Indians come from very different places, right? So our ideas of where we come from, those should also develop. The history of our states, of our people. So there's a lot of new focus on regional history. I remember we studied Gujarat in the medieval period, like early medieval, and it was a very, very interesting book. We studied Rajputs and how the Rajput group came to be, and also different parts of South India, like the Chola kingdom, the early kingdoms in Kerala, etc. So it was very interesting to see these regional developments. So it's not just studying North India like how it was in school. You're studying these different parts, and that kind of leads you to understand the bigger picture. And you get to understand different kind of social formations. You kind of get to look at data critically. And also, like, it's kind of fascinating that at the same kind of time frame that you're having such different formations all over the subcontinent. So yeah, it kind of tells a little bit more about diversity. What does Stephen specifically offer, and what I got from my course is inextricably kind of linked to Stephen's and my experience there. So, and I believe a lot of it is not just Stephen's, but you can also apply to other Delhi University colleges or even in colleges in general. So one is the society life. Various societies are there where students participate. Now, what is interesting about this is that societies, I realized, are largely like corporate, small corporate, companies. They are also almost like, in some ways, event management companies. So they hold fests or hold you know programs that you participate in and help in creating, right? So essentially from there, even though you are from history, you learn a lot of other skills, right? And I would highly encourage all high schoolers to, like, when you go to college, to get involved in societies. So what do you essentially learn? You essentially learn things like sponsorship, you learn things like publicity, which are very, very useful skills. And even when you're going out on the job market, a lot of people will ask you that, what did you do but study? And, this is something which is really substantial and rewarding work that you get out of it. And of course, at Stephens, there are different kinds of societies. I think there are like some 40 societies, but I'm sure other colleges also have societies, and they have similar events where you can kind of hone your skills and upskill yourself. There's also the placement cell. The placement cell kind of brings to you all kinds of placements that you can apply for, internships you can apply for, and eventually jobs you can apply for in your third year. And the placement cell is amazing for what they do, because what they do, essentially their job is to kind of, it's student run usually, they kind of go out and look for your internships and jobs and kind of connect you with those. And so if you're interested in taking up a job, it's a good idea to kind of be on the mailing list. Like, it was mailed to us. Other colleges may have a different system, but we largely got our placement news kind of mailed. So Stephen specifically offers this, that there's a course structure and the choice of writing the thesis instead of an exam in third year. So this part, you can kind of write a thesis, or you can kind of develop a research question and write it instead of kind of sitting for the exam. So that had been happening for the first time in my year. So in 2019, somebody did that. And after that, I think it has been gaining ground. So some people are not very exam oriented, and the third year exams are, of course, important. So that would be kind of a good thing to think about. That's something Delhi University also offers, but I know it's in practice at Stephens. Stephens also has excellent professors. There's no two ways. Stephens and the learning history at Stephens was something where it's obviously a very old college. It's established in 1881. Life at Stephens has come with its own traditions, which you really enjoy or don't enjoy and be part of. You agree or disagree, but kind of has a different feel to it because of, like, the just because it is how it is, and it's very adamant to continue its traditions. Also, staying on campus at Stephens is a beautiful campus, which also helped me kind of study history, because there's so much of history attached to all the walls, etc. Also, Stephens specifically has a very broad alumni base, which leads to exclusive opportunities just for stipendians. I remember there was this particular ambassador of a particular country, and there was a fellowship to that country, or some kind of research exchange. So you have these opportunities here specifically at Stephens, but I'm sure other colleges also have different opportunities that we didn't have. So careers, if I'm looking at careers and what are we looking ahead at, so most people, 50% of my class was looking to sit for the civil service exams, and so was I at the beginning. But that soon changed for me. But for a lot of people, they stuck through, and they're actually giving them means and their options right now. So all the best to them. But civil service is something which is very, very in Delhi. When I came from Calcutta, and in Calcutta it wasn't so big as much as it is in Delhi. It's quite an industry there. And having a history degree is said to be one of the most useful degrees, because you learn such a broad spectrum of things. And, it's actually very, very useful. A lot of people, of course, go on to do a master's in history, and to that, the seventh point, they go on to pursue a different master's like archaeology, anthropology, like me, museum studies, art history, gender. A lot of people get into the public policy development sector. Two of my very close friends are doing MPP, which is a master in public policy. Again, having a degree like history, you kind of get to know about all the things you wouldn't know otherwise, right? Because you actually really get into what happened and how were different groups. And of late, from the 70s, there's been a lot of focus in history on like oppressed groups and groups which haven't developed enough or haven't really benefited from development schemes, etc. So it's again a very useful degree to get into public policy or the development sector. A lot of people apply to this and they get through. A lot of people apply elsewhere for different MPP degrees. So yeah. The fourth is history-related startups or organizations. So I don't know if you've noticed on social media, but there is a lot of history-related startups or history-related organizations which are kind of there. And these history-related startups are basically doing 2-3 things. First is they are looking at bringing in speakers and speaking. Second is they are having like their own journals. They are having workshops, etc. So if you want to get kind of involved in that, that is also an option today. It wasn't there 2-3 years back, but I of late, like I have been seeing how much that has been developing, and and I guess it's good, right? Because there's a lot of entrepreneurship going on with history at the moment. A lot of people are going on to do corporate jobs, HR, management, PR, communication, media. And again, history is one of those very versatile degrees because, again, we write a lot, right? So when you write a lot, you obviously get better at writing and creative expression, things like that. And so a lot of people are going into PR. And in general, people also go into media and communication, may or may not be related to HR. And career options and expectations are always, always, always changing. So, don't be scared of, like, if you feel that you came into college thinking you're going to do a certain career, but you end up doing something completely different. That's perfectly fine, because every day you will be getting new information on the world and you'll be looking at the world a little bit more. So your experience will mold you. So career expectations will change, but don't be alarmed by that, but do your proper research before jumping into anything. And of course, among other reasons why history, I think, again, I've repeated this, history is a very, very useful degree. You can go into academia from to historical writing, get into historical discourse, but you can also kind of go elsewhere. You can kind of do other things that you want to do. For example, civils. It gives you a base for everything. You can also shift to a different disciplines, like I did. Like albeit it's a sister discipline, but a lot of people kind of, for example, take up MPP, right? And it gives you the chance to contribute to the current public discourse on history, of course. The current public discourse on history is very fraught, and there's like obviously a lot of contestations of who we were, who we are. So of course, when you're studying a history degree, you essentially become a specialist. You're working towards becoming a specialist in these matters. So it's a good way to kind of democratize your knowledge, by kind of going ahead and talking about what you're reading. Yeah, so just some general tips for a career after history. I think for the interview, always be very humble at Stephens. This is specific to Stephens. I think a lot of students get a lot of marks, and don't let that get to you. Be very humble at the interview. Second is career expectations and aspirations change. Don't be, scared to follow them. The world is interdisciplinary, and this is one of the most interdisciplinary subjects. Literally, if you study history, you can migrate to any other subject if you have or don't have a prior base, because you study history, you study so much in history, and you learn about so many different things that you won't even imagine. Of course, you read and you continue reading. I think reading is just one of those things that you should continue. I try reading at least 10 pages every day of something. It doesn't matter what. It helps you in writing, it helps you in thinking, it helps you in so many different ways. And of course, the knowledge you get is amazing. The world is harping towards like a T-shaped knowledge base. So essentially, what does that mean? If you look at the shape T, you look at like a broad knowledge base across all subjects, right? And a deep knowledge base in one of the subjects, right? So, for example, what would a broad knowledge base constitute of? For example, you would essentially, you should know about Newton's 3 laws. You should know a little bit of computing, things like Python, which is like the big thing right now. Data analysis, it's not that hard really. So a little bit of stats, etc. So once you kind of get these, and if you upskill in that sense, you also get to kind of look at, if you're interested in subject, you kind of get to look at the subject more creatively. I mean, there's a lot of focus right now in the history discourse in general on, on digital history and creating digital histories and kind of using stats, using computer simulations to like understand trends, etc. in history, right? Because history is also about a lot of incomplete data. So that's something which is very, very interesting. So learn things like Python, learn things like game theory, etc. Right? And of course, do internships over the breaks to kind of understand what you would like to do in the future. Doing internships is something which I 100% advocate for. In fact, after your exams are over, your board exams, like just go ahead and do some internship. I mean, among other things, 2 things happen out of it. First is you get some insight into like the real working world, right? So for example, the history you read is theoretical, or any political science you read, for example, is theoretical. And what happens on the ground, really? What are the negotiations? What other power dynamics are there? What is the schedule like? Things like that. You obviously get insight too from an internship. And essentially, if you're enjoying what you're doing, right? But the second thing which happens is that you get some idea of how it is to work, and that kind of discipline. Like obviously, when we are at school, we are working from 8:30 to 3. That was my school timing. I don't know about yours, but essentially you're working for so long. At work, you're working from 9 to 5. So essentially it's a matter of discipline. In college, what happens is that you have that longevity, that one stretch longevity kind of gets reduced, and so life becomes a little bit different. So that idea of kind of keeps you grounded, that you have to work like at one stretch. So I think internships, and especially office internships in that sense, is very interesting, because it kind of gives you insight into a new life that you eventually do have to lead. Get involved in societies, pick up skills. I was a thorough publicity person in my college. Like I used to look at publicity and look at how to get people at our events. So that was very fun, of course. But yeah, but other people picked up different skills. Like for example, people got sponsorships. Like they would cold call all these sponsors and kind of work. I think a lot of schools now have a lot of MUNs. So if you are involved in MUNs, you would know a little bit of this. But this is just like college kind of provides a democratic space where it's not just about MUNs, right? You also have other events which also require sophisticated teamwork and use of resources. So I think everybody should kind of get involved in societies and kind of learn new skills every day. And don't be scared of moving to a different city. So I came from Calcutta, and I think a lot of students eventually they would text me and call me and tell me that that they especially girls that they are hesitant of moving to a new city. And I would just say that don't, like, of course, be scared, but don't let this fear paralyze you. If you have the opportunity, do go out and live alone, and it will help you in life. It will help you in living alone and learning to live alone, and will give you also different exposures that you may not have gotten in your place of ordinary residence. For example, the opportunities that I got, the people I met, I would have never been able to meet them or talk to them just because I was in Calcutta and not in Delhi. And Delhi is also like the capital, right? There's so much happening all the time, especially related to history. There's so much of museums. There's so much of discourse which is happening. There are so many universities in Delhi, and they have so many interesting talks which are going on. You have JN, you have JMI, you have D, you have Ambedkar. So there's so many intellectual spaces. So if you're interested in history as an intellectual discipline, it's also a very good place to do it in Delhi. Of course, now everything is online, so you may have the opportunity otherwise to kind of get access to these seminars, webinars, whatever. But in general, Delhi has that quality about itself. And also, like, literally you'll be studying about the Qutub Minar and can visit the Qutub Minar, and actually you'll be studying about inscriptions at the Qutub Minar and can go and look at the inscriptions. Like, what's better than that, right? So essentially you get so much of opportunity in Delhi as well. You have so many think tanks, etc. A lot of people intern with different think tanks in my college. Whoever wanted to get into policy. So that was also kind of a place where you get so many opportunities. There are so many people trying to do so many amazing things, so many startups which are there, which you can volunteer for or create your own, actually. So in that sense, like a degree in history, kind of, especially in Delhi, kind of gives you so many opportunities to kind of meet, and also you get more sponsorship. Everything is a lot more working in Delhi than where I came from. So it was more dynamic in that sense. So yeah, like, it's a good city to be in. Of course, it has concerns about safety, and you will have to think about that if you are a woman or a non-binary person. But otherwise, it's a great place to be. Yeah. And anything else? Yeah, I'm largely like done. I have spoken about mostly what I wanted to do. And yeah, but in general, like, I would just say that it's such a versatile degree, and that we need more and more historians out there. And even if you don't intend to, like, you intend to get into academia, just like reading these texts and reading and understanding history is so important just for everyday living, because you learn so many other things, like how can different opinions kind of coexist, how is an argument formulated really, because essentially what you study in history is historiography, right, which is the science of writing history. So essentially you have the same data available to everyone. For example, a table of stats from the British Empire, right? But interpreting that would be different for different people. So how would you kind of formulate an argument? A lot of people are into debating who are into history. So that is also very interesting because history kind of teaches you how people write, how people formulate arguments, how they kind of really think differently on the same issue. So yeah, but like if you are interested, feel free to get in touch with me, and it would be great to see more historians in the country, honestly.
Thanks a lot, Ashwarya. I think that was a very, very informative session, and you covered in detail everything from the very application process to what you do at Stephens and also what you could do after actually getting the degree. So thanks a lot for that. I'm very, very sure that this is going to help a lot of students currently in their 11th and 12th about making decisions about what they would probably want to do once they actually. It was a wonderful session.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. Thank you for inviting me. And I really hope that this session has been useful. I tried to cover like why history and also my experience of history and how Delhi is also a very good place. So do consider applying to Delhi because it changed my life. It might change yours too. So thank you, Abhishek,
Thank you
for this opportunity.